Welcome to the space for refined thinking. We explore elevated conversations here, uncovering truth with absolute style. Stay curious with us.
Have you ever felt this, invisible atmospheric pressure in your romantic life?
Oh, constantly, yes.
Right. It's like this nagging sense that you're somehow supposed to be hitting certain milestones by a certain time. Like you're at a wedding or you're just scrolling through your feed, seeing engagement announcements, and suddenly you hear this ticking clock in the background of your own life.
Wow.
Every date, every casual text message, every anniversary, it just feels like it's counting down to a finish line you don't even remember signing up for.
It's a very real weight. And the funny thing is we rarely stop to actually identify it because it's so deeply ingrained in our cultural narrative.
Exactly.
We don't notice it because it's the water we're swimming in,
Yeah.
You just assume that's how life works. You meet someone, things get serious, and you just automatically start marching toward the exact same destination as everyone else.
Right. And so today's deep dive is about dissecting that exact feeling. We are putting the modern relationship timeline under a microscope today. And we've got a stack of sources that, honestly, they kind of blew my mind when I started connecting them.
That are really good stack today.
Yeah, it really is. So we're looking at the Off the Escalator project by Amy Guerin, which really names that pressure we were just talking about.
Right.
We're also pulling heavily from the Gottman Institute's relationship science, some fascinating modern dating psychology from Elemental Nest and Bonobology, and finally, a completely radical alternative to traditional romance from relationship expert Dr. Abby Medcalf.
It's a fantastic combination, honestly, of sociology, neuroscience, and really practical psychology.
Yeah.
Essentially, we're mapping out the hidden architecture of how we love, how we date, and how we decide to build lives together. Because once you see the architecture, you realize you don't actually have to live in the house exactly as it was built.
That's such a good way to put it. I kept thinking about it like a massive open world video game.
Okay, I like that.
Like you log in and society tells you there's only one main quest. You meet, you date, you move in, you get married, you have a couple of kids. Boom, game over, you win.
Right. Roll the credits.
Exactly. But nobody actually gives you the instruction manual. The developers keep changing the rules with every software update, or I guess in our case, every new generation. And sometimes you realize that the side quests or totally alternative maps are actually where you want to spend the rest of your life.
I mean, I love the video game framing, though I'd argue the game was originally programmed for a very specific reason.
Fair point.
The main quest hasn't just been pushed on us arbitrarily. For generations, society programmed that path to ensure, economic stability, physical safety, and a predictable environment for child rearing.
Makes sense.
It's a survival script. But our needs have evolved so drastically over the last 50 years. So before we can even talk about the mechanics of playing the game or how to survive those early dating levels, we really have to look at the underlying code.
So let's get into that code. Amy Guerin's work gives this conveyor belt a perfect name. She calls it the relationship escalator.
It's such a visceral metaphor.
It is. Think about stepping onto an escalator at the mall. You just stand there, and the machine's momentum physically carries you upward. You don't even have to walk.
No, you just ride.
Guerin says the default societal expectation for intimate relationships operates the exact same way. It progresses through these 8 incredibly rigid, highly visible steps.
And those steps are universally recognized, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
So the first step is simply contact. This is the initial spark. Flirting, casual dates, maybe an initial sexual connection. It's very low stakes.
Just feeling it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But immediately, if it goes well, you're pulled to step 2, which is initiation. This is where the emotional investment actually begins. You start making courtship gestures. You're thinking about them when they aren't around.
Which quickly forces you into step 3, which is claiming and defining. This is where you become an us.
Yes.
Yeah.
The labels.
You adopt labels. Boyfriend, girlfriend, partner. You agree to exclusivity. You claim each other so nobody else can.
Exactly. And once you have that label, the escalator really kicks into high gear. Step 4 is establishment.
Who does that look like?
It's where you adapt the rhythms of your daily life to accommodate this other person. They become your default +1. You text them good morning. You have regular weekend plans. The relationship becomes a structural pillar in your weekly routine.
Wow, yeah. And from there, it's just a straight shot up. The step 5 is commitment, where you're actively discussing a long-term shared future and integrating families.
Right, meeting the parents.
And then step 6 is the massive one we'll spend a lot of time on later, merging.
The big one.
You move in together, you sign a lease, you combine your bank accounts, you get engaged, you stop being two independent entities and become a single household.
Which, culminates in step 7, the conclusion, marriage.
Game over, you win.
Right. Historically, and in the traditional escalator model, this is the finish line. The relationship is now considered finalized. Society expects its structure to remain entirely static until one of you passes away.
It's wild to think of it as finalized. And then there's the bonus level, step 8, legacy, buying the house with the yard, having children, building the generational footprint.
Yes, the white picket fence.
Our sources point out that while this final step isn't as strictly mandated as it was, say, 50 years ago, couples still report feeling like they aren't viewed as fully valid adults by society until they hit those post-marriage benchmarks.
Oh, absolutely.
It's wild when you hear it listed out like that. We just blindly accept this as the only way to do love.
Well, we accept it because it's reinforced by 5 distinct hallmarks that Garan identifies. These are essentially the rules of the escalator.
All right, let's break those down.
First is monogamy, strict romantic and sexual exclusivity. Second is merging, which is sharing a home and finances.
Yeah.
Third is hierarchy.
I really want to pause on hierarchy because that one hit me hard when I was reading.
It's a tough one to confront.
It really is. It's this unspoken rule that your romantic partner instantly trumps all your other relationships. Like your best friend of 15 years suddenly takes a back seat because you've been dating someone for 8 months.
Right.
We just accept that romantic love is the ultimate superior form of connection and everything else is secondary.
It's a very modern Western construct, but yes, it's a defining hallmark. The fourth is sexual connection, the idea that a valid relationship must be rooted in physical intimacy. But the fifth hallmark is perhaps the most psychologically demanding. Continuity.
The rule that the escalator only goes up.
Precisely. The escalator model dictates that a relationship cannot pause, and it absolutely cannot step backward to a less merged state.
Right.
Imagine you and your partner live together.
Right.
You love each other, but you realize you actually sleep better and have less conflict when you have your own space. If you decide to sign separate leases and move into 2 different apartments down the street from each other, society views that as a massive failure. Your friends will ask who's moving out, assuming you're breaking up.
They'd look at you with total pity. Like, oh, I'm so sorry things are falling apart.
Exactly.
Even if you're actually happier. It really is like being on one of those moving walkways at a huge international airport. You step onto it, and you're just carried automatically toward the baggage claim of marriage and shared mortgages.
Baggage claim is a good way to put it.
Right. If you try to turn around and walk the other way on the walkway, everyone looks at you like you're crazy. But what if you realize halfway down the terminal that you actually want to go to a completely different gate?
Well, the problem isn't that the walkway exists. I want to be clear about that. For a lot of people, the escalator works beautifully. It provides comfort, a clear life script, social support.
Sure.
The problem arises when you stay on the walkway, not because it's taking you where you want to go, but because getting off feels socially terrifying.
Yeah, that fear of being the weird one.
Exactly. The entire goal of looking at these sources today is to show how you can be fiercely intentional. You can ride it to the top, you can hit pause on step 4 and stay there for a decade, or you can step off the machinery entirely.
Okay, so knowing that this massive invisible machinery exists, how do we actually handle the early stages without getting chewed up in the gears?
It's a process.
Because if we go back to step 1, contact and initiation, the modern dating landscape feels less like an escalator and more like a minefield.
It really does, because we are experiencing a massive collision between old-fashioned, ingrained courtship expectations and the chaotic immediacy of the digital age.
Yeah.
This is where the insights from Bunabology are incredibly useful. They've outlined what they call the 17 unwritten rules of dating. And if you look past the sheer number of rules, you see they aren't really about playing hard to get.
What are they about then?
They are almost entirely focused on emotional regulation and pacing.
Yeah, reading through them, I realized they're basically a survival guide for your brain chemistry.
That is a great way to describe it.
Let's look at the theme of pacing and space. Bonobology highlights Rule 4, which is space out your interactions. Rule 5, don't call immediately after the first date. But the one that really stopped me in my tracks was Rule 6.
The time limit.
Yes. They say you should keep the initial date short, and not just generally short. They recommend capping it at exactly 2 hours.
The 2-hour cap is brilliant from a psychological perspective. Think about what's happening in your brain on a fantastic first date.
You're just buzzing.
Right. You're sitting across from someone, they're laughing at your jokes, you share a mutual interest, your brain floods with dopamine and oxytocin. It's an intoxicating neurochemical rush.
Yeah, it feels amazing.
You feel this intense pull to keep the night going. You want to stay at that dimly lit bar for 6 hours and close the place down.
You feel like you've known them your whole life. It's the best feeling in the world. So why would you artificially cut that short at 2 hours?
Because that neurochemical cocktail severely impairs your judgment. Yes. When you overextend that very first date, you inevitably hit emotional exhaustion. The conversation shifts from light, engaging discovery into oversharing. You force premature intimacy to keep the high going.
Oh, wow. I've definitely done that.
We all have. Capping it at 2 hours forces you to prioritize the quality of the interaction over the sheer quantity of time. You leave on a high note, with genuine curiosity intact rather than dragging the evening into awkward silences or forced vulnerability.
That makes total sense because keeping it short acts as a natural guardrail against one of the other big traps they mention, which brings us to emotional boundaries.
Right.
Rule 7 is obviously limit talk about your exes. I think we all know that one. But Rule 16 is the quintessential modern dating pitfall. Your date is not your therapist. Avoid trauma dumping.
Trauma dumping is such a fascinating and ultimately destructive phenomenon. It often stems from a genuine, albeit misguided desire to fast-track intimacy. In our culture, we've begun to mistake shared pain for deep connection. A person might think, if I tell them about my deeply complicated relationship with my parents, or my darkest moment from 5 years ago, they'll really know me.
But they don't know you. They just met you an hour ago over an overpriced IPA.
Exactly. On a first or second date, that person has not yet earned the right to hear your deepest traumas. More importantly, they do not have the emotional context to support you.
That's a huge burden to put on someone.
It is. When you drop heavy emotional trauma onto a near stranger, it creates a highly volatile, false bond. It overwhelms their nervous system. True intimacy isn't built by handing someone your heaviest baggage on day one. It's built by slowly revealing yourself as trust is demonstrated over time.
It's like trying to build a house by dumping all the bricks on the lot at once instead of laying them row by row.
Perfectly said.
And speaking of overwhelming people, we have to talk about the digital boundaries. This is where I think almost everyone struggles today.
It's the Wild West out there with texting.
It really is. Rule 8 is about elevating your texting game, but it explicitly says not to play those toxic delay games, where you wait exactly 43 minutes to reply because they took 42 minutes.
Exhausting.
Rule 9 is no bombarding or double texting. Rule 12, do not stalk their social media. And absolutely do not bring up a photo from their 2018 vacation that you had to scroll for 20 minutes to find.
That is a surefire way to break the illusion of organic discovery. You just look unhinged.
Exactly. But the most critical digital boundary is Rule 13, which honestly should be the golden rule of modern connection. Keep your phone on Do Not Disturb during the date. Keep it off the table entirely.
I cannot emphasize this enough.
Even having it face down on the table feels like a threat these days.
Because it is a threat to the connection, the mere presence of a smartphone on the table reduces the cognitive capacity of both people, even if it doesn't buzz.
Wait, just having it there?
Yes. The research shows gadgets interrupt the delicate flow of interpersonal connection. Every single time you break eye contact to glance at a screen, you are non-verbally communicating to your date that they are inherently less important than whatever random notification might pop up. It shatters presence.
Ouch. Yeah, that's so true. The sources also point out some modern shifts that overwrite the old rules. Rule 14 says splitting the bill is the new norm, which removes a lot of the weird power dynamics of old-fashioned chivalry.
A very healthy shift.
And Rule 15 is about respect. No breadcrumbing. Don't keep someone on the hook with sporadic, low-effort attention just to stroke your own ego when you have no real intention of stepping onto the escalator with them.
Right, let them go.
But looking at this whole list, I have to push back a little bit.
Go ahead. What's the friction point for you?
Rule 17 of this exact same source says, stay true to yourself. It says to be authentic. But let's say I am naturally a highly talkative, eager person. I'm a text bomber. I get excited. I genuinely want to hang out for 6 hours on a first date because I'm having a blast. If I am enforcing a strict 2-hour cap and I'm deliberately holding back my texts so I don't bombard them, isn't that basically playing a game?
That's a very common question.
How can I be authentic if I'm aggressively policing my own behavior to follow a list of rules?
Well, I wouldn't call it policing. I'd call it pacing. The paradox you're highlighting is incredibly common. We confuse our immediate impulses with our authentic core self. We really need to distinguish between playing games and pacing for safety.
How do you separate them in the moment, though? Because it feels identical. You're holding back a text in both scenarios.
The difference lies entirely in your intention and your psychological state. Playing a game is manipulative. It's withholding a text specifically to make the other person feel anxious, to manufacture an artificial sense of scarcity so they chase you. Pacing for safety, on the other hand, is an act of self-awareness. It's recognizing that, as we discussed, the dopamine and oxytocin flood is literally acting like a drug in your system.
So you're saying I shouldn't trust my authentic self when I'm high on first date dopamine?
Quite literally, yes. That chemical cocktail overrides your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, evaluating part of your brain. Pacing yourself isn't about hiding who you are. It's about protecting both of you from the illusion of intimacy.
That makes a lot of sense.
By putting a boundary in place, like heading home after 2 hours or waiting an hour to text instead of sending 10 rapid-fire thoughts, you give your nervous system time to regulate. You allow yourself to objectively evaluate if this person is actually compatible with you, rather than just getting swept away in the momentum of the escalator.
Wow.
You reveal your authentic self gradually, at a pace where true trust can actually take root.
Okay, when you frame it like that, it's not manipulation, it's just good driving. You don't slam the gas pedal to the floor the second you get in the car, even if you really love driving fast. You navigate the neighborhood first.
Perfect analogy.
So let's say you've done that. You've navigated the neighborhood, you followed the rules, you paced yourself, you didn't trauma dump over appetizers. The escalator is pulling you upward into the claiming and defining stage. You have arrived at the modern dating gauntlet, the DTR.
Define the relationship.
Yes, the DTR conversation. And according to the data from Elemental Nest, this is harder than ever right now. 30% of Americans are using dating apps.
That's a huge number.
That means we have an unprecedented, almost paralyzing volume of romantic options. And because of that volume, relationship ambiguity is at an absolute all-time high.
Oh, without a doubt.
You could be talking, hanging out, seeing each other, casually dating, or exclusively dating, and depending on who you ask, every single one of those phrases means something completely different.
The linguistic gymnastics we use to avoid clarity are just astounding. And this brings us to the actual science of anxiety.
Let's get into the science.
Dr. Helen Fisher's research on romantic love, combined with attachment theory, provides a really clear picture of why the DTR is so vital. We tend to think of ambiguity as just being annoying or frustrating. But to the human brain, ambiguity is perceived as a literal threat.
Wait, like a physical threat?
Yes. From an evolutionary standpoint, your standing in your social group meant life or death. If you didn't know where you stood with a key partner, you were in danger.
Oh, wow.
Today, when you don't know where you stand romantically, your brain's stress response triggers. Your amygdala fires up. Your cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone, spike drastically.
So when you're staring at your phone, wondering if you're the only person they're texting, that tight feeling in your chest isn't just butterflies, it's literally a fight or flight response.
Precisely. It disrupts your sleep, it ruins your appetite, it shatters your focus at work. And people with anxious attachment styles suffer the most in this gray area.
I can imagine.
Their nervous systems are hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of abandonment. They need clear, articulated boundaries to feel safe.
Right.
The data shows that individuals who transition into clearly defined relationships report a 40% higher satisfaction level. Not because their partner suddenly changed, but simply because the label provides an emotional safety net. The ambiguity is gone, the cortisol drops, and the brain can finally relax and enjoy the connection.
That makes perfect sense. In my video game analogy, the DTR is the crucial save point.
Okay, tell me more.
If you don't sit down and have the DTR conversation, you're playing the game for 30 hours straight without ever saving your progress. You're having great dates, you're meeting their friends, but if a misunderstanding happens or their ex texts them or the console unplugs, you lose everything because you never actually define the parameters.
Yes.
But, on the flip side, you can't just spam the save button. If you try to DTR after the second date, right after the opening cutscene, you haven't actually accomplished anything worth saving. It will just freak the other person out.
I think the video game analogy holds up perfectly here. Timing is everything. You can't force the save point too early, or you trigger a retreat.
So how do you know when it's time?
Well, the sources outline clear behavioral markers. You shouldn't be guessing. Look at the reality of your interactions. Are you having consistent daily communication that feels natural, not forced.
Right, like you're not agonizing over every text.
Exactly. Are you naturally making future plans that extend weeks out rather than just asking, what are you doing tonight? Have you started integrating into each other's lives by meeting friends or family?
Basically, are you already acting like a couple without the label?
Exactly. If the exclusive behaviors are already happening organically, the verbal confirmation is just updating the software to match the hardware.
I love that. And the elementalness source emphasizes that how you trigger this conversation matters just as much as when.
Very true.
You don't want to do it in a high-pressure environment. Don't do it at a loud party. And definitely don't do it at a Michelin star restaurant where they feel trapped at the table.
Right? Nowhere they can't easily leave if they need to.
You want a relaxed, private setting. A walk in the park, or just sitting on the couch. And the phrasing is critical. They suggest using I statements like, I've really enjoyed the last couple of months and I've deleted my dating apps because I'm not interested in seeing anyone else.
It's an invitation, not a demand.
Right. You're laying your cards on the table. It's so much better than cornering them with an ultimatum like, okay, are we official or am I leaving right now? Which just, like we said, spikes their cortisol.
It's also worth noting that the timeline for this conversation is heavily influenced by societal and cultural nuances. The DTR is not a universal constant.
Oh, really?
Oh, definitely. If you look at generational data, Gen Z approaches this very differently than millennials. Gen Z tends to initiate the DTR much earlier.
Why is that?
They often establish digital exclusivity, like confirming they've both deactivated Hinge or Tinder almost immediately, long before they might use traditional labels like boyfriend or girlfriend.
That's fascinating. I guess because the apps are so central to dating now. And there are huge geographic differences too, right?
Absolutely.
Dating in a small rural town where your families might know each other and everyone sees your car parked outside their house creates a very different timeline than dating in a massive city like New York.
Exactly.
In New York, you have total anonymity. You could be dating 3 people in different boroughs who will literally never cross paths.
And LGBTQ plus couples navigate entirely unique DTR timelines as well. They often have to factor in complex realities like the coming out process, chosen family dynamics, and physical safety.
Right. There are so many external factors.
Deciding to be exclusively privately committed might happen quickly, but defining the relationship publicly might take significantly longer depending on those external pressures. The overarching takeaway is that the DTR isn't just a box to check. It's a tool for emotional regulation. It transitions you out of the anxiety of the unknown and officially locks you onto the escalator's establishment phase.
Okay, so you've saved your game, the cortisol is dropped, you're a defined us.
Congratulations.
But the funny thing about the escalator is, once you're on it, it doesn't stop. It actually starts speeding up. Because the next major milestone staring you in the face is step 6, merging, moving in together.
This is where it gets real.
Yeah, this is where the stakes reach an entirely new level.
Yeah.
You aren't just sharing weekend plans anymore. You're combining your physical lives, your legal liabilities with a lease, your personal space, and your daily habits.
The merging phase is where relationships either solidify or shatter. To understand why, we lean heavily on the research from the Gottman Institute, specifically their framework of 20 essential questions to ask before moving in together.
The Gottman Institute is amazing.
They're the gold standard for empirical relationship research.
Yeah.
And they've identified a massive, pervasive trap that couples fall into at this exact stage. It's the psychological trap of sliding versus deciding.
Sliding versus deciding. I read this section 3 times because I realized I've definitely done this in the past.
A lot of us have.
Talk to me about the mechanism of sliding.
Sliding is what happens when momentum replaces intentionality. Couples often slide into cohabitation out of pure logistical convenience. Let's say you're dating someone and you already spend 5 nights a week sleeping at their apartment.
Very common scenario.
Your own lease is up in 2 months. Your landlord wants to raise the rent. You look at your partner and think, well, I'm practically living here anyway. Why am I paying $1,500 a month for an apartment I barely use? We might as well just move in together.
It feels so logical in the moment. It's an economic no-brainer.
But it's an emotional disaster. You slide into a profound life transition without making an active, intentional decision about the relationship itself.
Right.
The Gottman research shows that couples who bypass the intentional decision-making process, who move in just because it makes sense on paper, have a significantly higher risk of intense, intractable conflict and relationships dissatisfaction later on.
It makes sense. Sliding into moving in together just because your lease is ending is like signing a 30-year mortgage on a giant house just because it started raining while you were walking past an open house.
I love that.
I mean, sure, it keeps you dry today, but now you're legally locked into a massive, complicated structure that you didn't actually inspect. You didn't check the foundation. You just wanted out of the rain.
That's an excellent way to conceptualize it. You skip the inspection.
But I want to play devil's advocate here, because this is where theory hits reality. We are living in a massive cost of living crisis.
Yes, we are.
Rent prices are astronomical. Groceries are expensive. How do you actually balance financial survival with romantic intentionality? It's easy for relationship researchers to say, don't slide, take your time. But what if a couple literally cannot afford two separate rents anymore? Are they just doomed?
That is a deeply pragmatic and valid critique. The Gottman approach wouldn't necessarily dictate that you must never move in for financial reasons. Life happens. Economics dictate behavior. What the research demands is that if financial pressure is the catalyst, you must bring extreme, almost uncomfortable intentionality to the process of the move. You combat the danger of sliding by having rigorous, explicit conversations about what this move actually signifies. You have to do the inspection while you're signing the papers.
Which brings us to the meat of this section, the 20 questions. And the very first big one they insist you answer is defining the meaning of the move.
Exactly. You have to look at each other and ask, is this a test run for marriage? Are we moving towards step 7 on the escalator? Or is this just a highly practical roommate situation with romantic benefits?
That's a huge distinction.
If one partner silently believes that signing the lease is a stepping stone to getting an engagement ring in a year, and the other partner thinks it's just a great way to split the Wi-Fi bill and save for a solo trip to Europe, you are walking into a minefield.
The resentment would build so fast. And once you align on the meaning, you have to tackle finances. And the Gottman source is incredibly firm that simply saying, oh, we'll just split things 50-50 is nowhere near enough. It's too vague.
Way too vague.
They challenge you to explore what money actually means to each of you on a psychological level.
Because money is rarely just about math. It's about deeply rooted emotional security. For one person, money might represent freedom, spontaneity, and the ability to enjoy life in the moment.
Like, let's go out to dinner.
Right. For the other, money might represent safety, responsibility, and control over existential anxiety. When the spontaneous person orders takeout 3 nights a week, the security-driven person doesn't just see a drain on the checking account, they feel a literal threat to their safety.
And practical math of 50-50 rarely works anyway if there's an income disparity. Does 50-50 include your personal gym membership? What about date nights?
Exactly. It gets messy.
The Gottman framework suggests explicitly discussing systems, like a proportional split where the person making 70% of the income pays 70% of the rent. Or a hybrid model where you keep your own private checking accounts for personal freedom, but you fund one joint account specifically for household bills.
Creating the system before the phone bill arrives prevents the monthly panic. The third major friction point the questions address is habits and chores.
Oh, boy.
The advice here is wonderfully blunt. Discard outdated gender roles entirely. You divide the household labor by preference and tolerance. But the deeper psychological work is addressing your baseline standard of cleanliness.
Yes. The classic bed-made every single morning person versus the lived-in cozy mess person. I know couples who have legitimately almost broken up over whether a coffee mug can sit in the sink overnight.
Oh, the coffee mug argument. It's famous.
It sounds so petty from the outside, but inside the apartment is World War III.
Yeah.
Why is the mug so explosive?
Because, as Gottman's research reveals, it isn't actually about the mug.
Okay, what is it about?
To the highly tidy person, an orderly environment is how they maintain mental peace. When they see the unwashed mug left by their partner, they don't just see a dirty dish. They interpret it as a profound lack of respect for their shared sanctuary.
Wow.
On the flip side, to the relaxed person, home is the one place they don't have to perform or be perfect. So when they are demanded to wash the mug immediately, they don't hear a request for cleanliness. They feel controlled, micromanaged, and unaccepted.
Wow. So you're not arguing about dishes, you're arguing about respect and autonomy.
Precisely.
You have to negotiate those standards before you move your boxes in. And part of that negotiation involves sleep and space. I loved this part of the source because it attacks the romance myth.
It really does.
Moving in together doesn't mean you have to share 100% of your physical existence. You have to discuss. Are you an early bird or a night owl? Does one person need the room freezing cold to sleep? Do you snore?
Sleep deprivation destroys emotional regulation faster than almost anything else. The Gottman source points out, that many highly successful couples thrive by using separate blankets, the Scandinavian sleep method, or even maintaining entirely separate bedrooms.
I've heard of that.
There is no moral failing in prioritizing healthy sleep over the romanticized image of cuddling all night.
Which perfectly sets up the most staggering and honestly intimidating statistic from the entire Gottman Institute section. They found that when you move in together, you will inevitably encounter conflict. But here's the number. 69% of a couple's problems are perpetual.
It's a heavy number to digest.
It's terrifying. 69%. That means almost 7 out of 10 arguments you have with your partner will never, ever have a neat, permanent resolution.
That's correct.
If I heard that before moving in, I'd probably keep my own apartment. It sounds incredibly depressing.
It does sound pessimistic on the surface, but it's actually the key to long-term sanity once you understand the psychology behind it.
Okay, explain that to me.
Gottman defines perpetual problems as conflicts grounded in fundamental, unalterable differences in personality, temperament, or core lifestyle needs. Successful cohabitation, successful merging, is not about magically fixing your partner or achieving a state of perfect, conflict-free harmony. That's a Hollywood myth.
So what do you do with the 69%? Just fight forever?
No, you shift from trying to solve the problem to learning how to manage the problem.
Oh.
If you are a hyper-punctual person whose anxiety spikes when you are 5 minutes late, and your partner is a time-blind, chronically late person who moves at their own pace, that is a perpetual problem.
Right.
Moving in together means developing a management system for that friction. It means learning to communicate about it with humor, grace, and mutual respect, rather than expecting them to suddenly transform into a Swiss watch. You accept the gridlock and build workarounds.
That reframes everything. Moving in isn't the finish line where all your problems disappear. It's just opening a new, highly complex management branch of the relationship. And speaking of management, the Gottman source advises one more crucial thing regarding the financial pressure of moving in. They say you actually need to plan for what happens if the relationship doesn't work out.
Yeah, a contingency plan. The exit strategy.
Yeah. Discussing the exit strategy while you're packing boxes to move in together feels like terrible luck. It feels like you're manifesting a breakup.
It feels counterintuitive, but it's actually an act of deep mutual respect and psychological safety. If you break up, who keeps the apartment? How do you afford to break the lease? Who gets the expensive couch you bought together?
All the logistical nightmares.
Having this logistical map drawn out when you are calm and deeply in love removes a massive layer of existential, unspoken panic from the foundation of the relationship. You aren't trapped by the lease. You are choosing to stay.
Okay, so we've looked at the intense Gottman gauntlet. We see what it takes to survive step 6 of the escalator. But what if you look at those 20 intense questions? You look at the 69% perpetual conflict stat. You look at the core requirement of merging, and you just say, you know what? No thanks.
A completely valid response.
What if you love your partner deeply, but you love your own apartment, your own mess, your own thermostat setting, and your own sleep schedule just as much? Are you just broken? Are you doomed to be single forever?
Not at all. And this is where we reach the most fascinating part of our deep dive. We are going to look at the radical alternative of stepping off the escalator entirely without ending the relationship. We turn to the insights of relationship expert Dr. Abby Medcalf and the concept of LAT. Living apart together.
Living apart together. I had never heard this formal term before reading the sources, but I instantly loved the concept.
LAT is a structural setup where committed, long-term couples consciously choose to maintain separate households while staying emotionally, romantically, and often legally connected.
Wow.
As Dr. Medcalf points out, this completely defies the cultural script. Society tells us that true love inevitably means living under one roof, sharing a fridge, and combining your laundry. LA says we can have profound commitment without shared domesticity.
And the sources show this isn't just some brand new trendy TikTok concept either. There's historical precedent. The philosophers Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre famously maintained a LAT relationship back in the 1920s.
They're the classic example.
They were life partners but fiercely protected their independent living spaces. But what really blew my mind is the modern data. An estimated 10% of adults in committed relationships in the U.S. currently choose to live apart from their partner.
It's a huge shift.
And to be clear, this is by choice. This isn't long distance because of military deployment or visa issues or work travels. It's a deliberate lifestyle choice within the same city.
10% is a highly significant demographic. It means millions of people are quietly rejecting the escalator. So we really have to ask the why. Why do people willingly take on the complexity of living apart?
Yeah, what's the appeal?
The first and most prominent reason is the preservation of autonomy. When we look at attachment styles, research shows that individuals with a highly secure attachment can thrive in LAT setups because they do not fear engulfment, nor do they fear abandonment.
They're just confident in the bond.
They can love deeply and trust fully without needing physical proximity 24/7 to prove the love exists.
They don't need to check the other person's location to feel safe. The mental health aspect of this is absolutely huge, too. Dr. Metcalf notes that LAT is practically a superpower for neurodivergent individuals or people with sensory processing issues.
Oh, absolutely.
If you think about it, living with another human is a sensory onslaught. The sounds of them chewing, the visual clutter of their mail on the counter, the smell of their cooking, the constant unpredictability of another body in your space.
It's a lot.
If that overstimulates you, sharing an apartment can drain your battery to zero every single day.
Precisely. For someone who needs pristine environmental control to regulate their nervous system, a shared living space can feel like a slow, daily wearing down of their psyche. Living apart allows them to retreat to their own perfectly calibrated sanctuary.
That sounds heavenly, honestly.
They recharge fully, which means when they do spend time with their partner, they are showing up with 100% of their energy, rather than functioning on a baseline of irritable exhaustion.
There's also a highly practical parental application that the sources highlight. For divorced individuals who are navigating life with kids and looking to blend families, LAT is often the most stable, compassionate choice.
It's a lifesaver for blended families.
Merging households with teenagers from different marriages can introduce massive territorial conflict and resentment. LAT allows the parents to protect their children's peace, maintain their established household routines, and still enjoy a deeply committed romantic relationship on their own terms.
It prioritizes the stability of the children while still fulfilling the romantic needs of the adults. It's a very elegant solution. But, as Dr. Metcalf outlines, LAT requires an immense amount of intentionality.
Because you don't have the script anymore.
Exactly. Because you are entirely off the escalator, you no longer have society's default script telling you what to do next. You have to write your own code. She outlines 5 key strategies for LAT success, starting with strategy 1, creating a shared vision.
You have to explicitly define the rules of your specific universe. You have to exercise what the researchers call relational agency, which is the ability to co-create your own agreements from scratch.
It's a lot of work.
You have to sit down and ask the hard questions. Are we monogamous? Are we planning to get married but still live apart? What does showing up for each other actually look like if I can't just walk into the kitchen and make you coffee? How many nights a week do we sleep over?
Because without a shared vision, LAT quickly devolves into just casual dating. Strategy 2 follows right behind it, establishing rituals of connection. When you live together, intimacy often happens by accident. You brush your teeth side by side, you pass each other in the hallway, you naturally debrief your day while making dinner. In a LAT setup, you have to engineer those moments. You can't rely on proximity.
You have to build the emotional tether manually. Metcalf suggests morning voice notes, or a standing weekly date night that is treated as sacred, or even creating shared Spotify playlists. You have to actively insert yourself into their daily rhythm.
Strategy 3 is where we hit the most significant friction point, financial boundaries. The method Metcalf suggests for LAT couples is the yours, mine, ours approach. You maintain your personal independence, you pay your own rent, your own utilities, but you create a shared financial pool specifically for the relationship.
Okay, like a joint account.
Right. This pool funds your dates, your vacations, or the travel costs between your respective homes.
Okay, this is where I have to step in and push back again because my practical brain is just flashing red lights.
I figured you might.
This setup sounds absolutely amazing for personal space and mental peace. But let's look at the math. 2 rents, 2 mortgages, 2 sets of internet bills, heating bills, water bills. In our current economy, where housing costs are crushing people, isn't LAT fundamentally a luxury for the wealthy?
It's a very fair question.
How does the average person afford to step off the escalator and maintain 2 entirely distinct households?
You're highlighting the absolute biggest critique of the LA model, and your pushback is entirely valid. The yours, mine, ours financial method absolutely requires surplus resources. We cannot ignore that in many ways, LA is a privilege of class and income.
Yeah, it has to be.
For a massive portion of the population, cohabitation is not just a romantic milestone, it is a strict economic necessity to avoid poverty.
You move in together to survive the winter, basically.
Exactly. That economic reality reinforces why open financial communication is a core strategy if you want to attempt this. Choosing LA is a highly intentional and sometimes economically sacrificial choice.
Right, you're making a trade.
It means consciously prioritizing your spatial autonomy over the financial benefits of shared living. For an average earner, choosing LAT might mean you have to accept living in a tiny studio apartment or having roommates instead of splitting a beautiful one-bedroom apartment with your partner. You are paying a premium for your peace.
That makes total sense. It's a calculated trade-off. You're buying your autonomy. So, moving on to strategy 4, anticipating changing needs. Because LAT isn't a static destination, Medcalf suggests implementing quarterly board meetings.
I love that concept.
I love this phrasing. You actually put a date on the calendar every 3 months to audit the relationship. What's working? Are we spending too much time at my house? Do we need to adjust our shared fund?
It prevents resentments from silently building in separate houses. And finally, we have strategy 5, managing social perceptions. People in non-traditional partnerships experience what sociologists call relationship invisibility.
Because they don't look like a couple on paper.
Because you don't share an address, your extended family or coworkers might constantly assume your relationship isn't real, or that you're just casually dating, or that someone has commitment issues.
Oh, I can hear it now. When are you guys going to finally get serious and move in? You'd hear that constantly.
Constantly. So you have to develop a unified go-to script to deflect that judgment. You need a calm, pre-planned response.
Like what?
Something along the lines of, we are deeply committed to each other and we've found that we are actually much better partners when we maintain our own spaces to recharge.
You have to be an unshakable team against societal expectations.
You have to be completely bulletproof in your own definition of the relationship because the escalator machinery is always going to try to pull you back on.
Always.
Okay, looking at the clock, we have covered massive ground today. We've mapped out the entire architecture. We started at the bottom of the escalator, figuring out how to survive the neurochemical rush of a first date with that 2-hour cap. We learned how to lower our cortisol levels by hitting the DTR save point. We navigated the intense 20-question Gottman gauntlet of deciding to merge our lives. And finally, we realized that you can just step off the walkway entirely, protect your peace, and live in your own house forever if you want to.
The central through line connecting all of these diverse sources, from the initial texting boundaries to the Gottman cohabitation questions, all the way to the LAT board meetings, is exactly what we established at the very beginning. Intentionality.
Yes, intentionality.
The relationship escalator is a societal tool. It's not a mandatory life sentence. You have the ultimate agency to decide which step you want to stand on, how long you want to stay there, and whether you want to ride the machine at all.
Exactly. Whether you are prepping for a first date tonight and trying to figure out how to pace yourself, or you've been married and sharing a blanket for 20 years, the core takeaway is to stop letting momentum make your choices for you. You get to write the code.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new lens to view your own relationship timeline. Knowledge is truly most valuable when you can understand the mechanics behind it and apply it to your own unique context.
So, to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, we've talked extensively about how the traditional relationship escalator ends at romantic marriage and how LAT removes the need to live with your romantic partner entirely.
Right.
But what happens if we take this logic one step further? What if we start decentralizing romantic love entirely from our life structures? What if the future of the relationship escalator isn't about romance at all, but about elevating platonic friendships?
Oh, that's a fascinating extrapolation of the data.
Think about it. Imagine a world where we buy houses, merge our finances, and raise children with our absolute best platonic friends. You create this incredibly deep, stable, lifelong economic and domestic partnership with someone you trust implicitly, while keeping your romantic and sexual lives completely separate, perhaps through LAT arrangements with romantic partners.
A total paradigm shift.
What if the person you build your legacy with isn't the person you fall in love with? Food for thought on your next 2-hour date. Until next time, keep exploring the deep end.